It's time now to look in detail at how people can work together in both InCopy and its sister program, Adobe InDesign, to work jointly on the live production of newspaper and magazine pages. If you've worked your way through all the InCopy tutorials, you'll remember we started back in the first one by looking at how an InCopy user could see part of this InDesign layout and make changes to the nib about the mining disaster story in China. That's the story that's showing up here in bold black lettering. Let's zoom in on it. It's that nib down here in the column of nibs. It's showing up in bold black lettering because it's been earmarked by the page designer as an InCopy assignment for an individual editor to work on. If we look at it here in InCopy, the rest of the page is greyed out. That's because the InCopy user hasn't been assigned the rights to make changes anywhere else on the page. You may remember that the InCopy user can also see the story in different ways by clicking between the three View tabs here towards the top of the page. Here in Layout View, the user can see the assignment as it will appear in the finished InDesign page. Here in Story View, the InCopy user can make changes to the copy and the headline in a text editing environment. You'll notice the font is completely different to what will actually appear on the finished page. If we look at the page, you'll see the headline is in bold Franklin Gothic heavy typeface, and the text itself is set in 8-point Century Schoolbook. Here though, in my text editing environment, I can choose a nice big screen-friendly font, in this case Verdana 24-point, that just makes it easy and clear for me to edit it without worrying about what the reader will finally see. Here in Galley View, you see a bit of a compromise between the two views. We've still got the text editing environment, but here we'll see exactly how the lines will break. In other words, why the hyphenation will be and exactly how the story will appear on the page in terms of the layout. If both the page designer and a reporter or sub are working to tight deadlines, it can be really useful to have them both working live on different parts of the page. Let's just have a look at the whole of the page again here. It can be useful to have them working live on different parts of the page without them having to constantly wait for the other one to finish what they're doing. For example, it would really slow things down if a text editor had to wait until the designer had finished work on the entire page before they could work out whether their copy and their headline were actually going to fit the available space. Let's now look in detail at how to link the two programs so that we can work in this way. The process of linking the two programs, InCopy and InDesign, begins with the layout in InDesign. That's the program we're in now. In this case, we're going to be updating this existing InDesign page, as if we were moving through separate editions of a newspaper, updating just some of the stories for the next edition. But it could just as easily be a page at an early stage of production. If the page designer is happy with part of the page, they can hand this part of the page over to text editors to finalize the content while they work on the rest of the design. The liaison between the two programs works by exporting individual objects or frames from the InDesign page so that they can be opened as InCopy stories. You can do this with all the text or graphics frames on the InDesign page. Once you've done this, colleagues can then select and edit both words and images in InCopy. They can edit the text in all the ways we've looked at in so much detail in the InCopy tutorials, and they can do basic editing of images, for example choosing, cropping and rotating them. If I wanted, I could open this image of Putin in InCopy and flip it round horizontally so that he's facing into the page. I stress the word basic editing though. If you want to do something more lavish to your pictures, you should really be working in a more sophisticated program like Photoshop. Let's get down to business then and look at how to export objects from this page so that people can work on them in InCopy. You do this by going to the Edit menu at the top of the screen and dropping down to the InCopy option towards the middle of the list. When you get the flyout menu, move right and drop down to Export. Move right again and choose All Graphics and Stories. You'll notice that you can opt just to export graphics or stories, or if you've selected particular frames on the page, you can export just that selection. But in this case, I want to make all the content on this page available to colleagues in InCopy so that they can work on it. So I choose the option to export all graphics and stories. Once I've done that, I get this dialog box that tells me what the exported objects will be called and where the computer proposes to save them. Unless I specify otherwise, the stories will inherit the name of the page they've come from, in this case National News Page, and they'll be numbered in sequence. It means they'll all look much the same, but this isn't usually a problem. We'll see why a little bit later. What is important is that you know where you're going to save them. It's vital that you organise this carefully, or you could end up later looking for a needle in a haystack. I'm going to make sure that I create a new subfolder in the folder that contains this page, the National News Pages folder, and I'm going to put all the InCopy stories in this subfolder to keep them strictly separate from the InDesign layout. So let's just select that new folder option. I'm going to call it exported, if I can spell properly, exported InCopy stories. Just type more slowly, so there we are. And now if I click save, I'll see that the program gradually, it takes a while to do this, but it's exporting all those InCopy stories. And I also get this reminder from InDesign that I need to save the layout page to incorporate the exported InCopy stories before I can go any further. This is a formality, so let's just click OK and we can get on with it. Once we've done that, you'll notice that the appearance of the InDesign page changes. There's now a little globe and document icon in the top corner of each of the exported objects. Let's just zoom in on that so that we can see it in more detail. There's the icon there and there. That tells me that all these frames that show this icon have now been exported and they're available, they're linked to InCopy, and they can be opened in that program. And if you want to reassure yourself that these new InCopy files do actually exist, you can go to that subfolder that you created and you can see them all waiting there. Next, we're going to look at how to work with these InCopy files to create specific assignments for your colleagues to work on.